Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany. Welcome back, or welcome if you've never been here before. Today I'm giving you some dark romance recommendations. And I'm so excited because this is in collaboration with Samantha from Books with Samantha for her Trope Week. I love her. She is such a ball of joy. She's so kind and supportive. She is giving me a ton of recommendations. She understands my need for a bonkers novella. She's also responsible for my deep dive into Catherine Moon, and I just loved meeting her on the booktuber retreat, staying up with her and Rachel, and I miss that. So thank you for asking me to collab. Be sure to check out her video if you aren't already. I don't know how. Also, I do have some dark romance recommendations across genres. So I'm giving you some historical, paranormal, mafia, BDSM. Obviously, it's me. So I want to start out with some more recent reads since you have not heard me wrap up my September. And I think it's only fitting to start with Black Sheep, okay, by Bria Weaver and Alexa Harlow. This is a serial killer romance where our heroine is the serial killer, and I do think if you are a fan of the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey, you have got to pick this up. It also gave me some Dexter vibes, and there are elements that I think were done just a little bit better. Even though I loved the Mindfuck series, it is a trap, okay? You cannot just read one. Loved that reading experience, but here I think the musing about her psychopathy, the reveals on her plot of vengeance, and the connection between the hero and the heroine are a little bit better, in my opinion. Okay, please read it so we can discuss. But we're following Bria. She's brilliant, she's ruthless, and she's cunning. We get a clear picture of that early on, and she has this plot of vengeance to take out the cult that's responsible for her childhood trauma. She's also a doctoral student studying within the field of criminology. And our hero is a professor at the university that's teaching within that same field. And so we get a bit of a student-teacher dynamic, but not really, because he refuses to put her on to his research because he's so smitten with her from the very moment that he sees her in a coffee shop. And it's not because of his attraction to her. Well, that's in large part, but he's really keying into her behavior, and the stakes are really high because they're both after the same cult, and he is affiliated with the FBI, and Bria does find a way onto that research project. And I love how throughout this book, she's 3 steps ahead of him, using the information as a student, and he is completely gone, fixated, and hell-bent on having her. So they're forced into proximity, they have the same goal, and like I said, I think the musing on her psychopathy, being that she doesn't know what to make of her feelings for him and questioning if she's even capable of that. I loved the steam within this. I mean, I love shibari, okay? I love a rigor. I love depictions of rope across the skin, how a body can be contorted into art, so that's present within this steam. We're getting primal kink, we're getting pegging. That runs the gambit, but I like the way in which they share dominance within this. I love the bonkers reveal on why Elijah is hell-bent on taking down this cult. And I also think that this gave me Dexter vibes because Bria does have a mentor. He not only taught her how to assuage her urges, but he also taught her how not to get caught. So I think this is a well thought out plot. Okay, it's crazy. It's also fast paced, and I enjoyed the romance. So it's bonkers. And I definitely think you should pick it up if you're looking for another Mindfuck series experience. I also have to talk about Breaking Meredith by Izzy Sweet and Sean Moriarty. This was absolutely everything when it comes to a keyboard pianist type of hero. That is my way of describing any hero or heroine character rather that is techie, okay? Computer science inclined. And I really like those kind of characters because they relate a lot better with machinery than they do humans. And because of the romance, they're really forced to unpack that. And this just gave me all of the vibes. This is a stalker and a captor-captive romance. Also, best friend's younger sister being that Simon is the right-hand man to the head of a criminal organization that has their hand in everything. Really, they're working on the White House next in this book. Simon has been surveilling Meredith for the last 5 years, and now he's placed in a position to where it is his job to look after her, because Meredith is a bit of a black widow. In the beginning of this book, you learn that she has been using her beauty to lure in affluent men who are also responsible for pretty heinous crimes of humanity. And up until this point, she's never really gone as far as to murder, but she has to in order to protect herself, which places her in a position to go to her brother for help, who she's estranged from because of his lifestyle. And that's when the captor-captive situation enters the chat, because Simon is tasked with protecting her, which he takes to the umpteenth degree, okay? Simon is willing to chain her to the bed, also, administer some spanking just by way of punishment. He's willing to do whatever it takes in order to protect her. And Meredith is a bit of a brat. I love that she isn't submissive at all, and although she needs the protection, she's willing to scratch, bite, and claw her way out of the situation if she needs to. And what I really enjoyed about this book is how Simon is a really stern, he isn't neurotypical, okay, an obsessed hero. And the reveals on how obsessed he's been with her were absolutely beautiful. And the way that she describes being the site of his obsession and how that's empowering for her really moved me. But yeah, we're dealing with a psychopathic computer science god who's completely smitten with her. There's a bit of breeding kink in here, and it is dark. It's dark because of the lengths that he's willing to go to keep her safe. And it's coercive. There's some dubious consent. There is, of course, murder in the beginning of this book, a lot of violence. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I highly suggest you pick it up. I loved Simon so much. He's just everything. I'm also going to mention, okay, Sordid by Nikki Sloan. I'm going to cant this to the side. Is that how you say it? Cant, slant. Anyway, this was dark. I will say that if you are not a fan of heroines falling in love with heroes that assault them, then I would not pick this book up, because that's exactly what happens at the beginning of this book. Luca does assault. I forgot her name already. Let's look. Let's just keep it real here, because I don't remember. Sorry, you guys. I'm also attempting to do minimal editing, so I cannot find the heroine's name for anything. I'm so sorry. But she is a pre-med student, and she first meets Luca when he is a teacher's assistant. And, the pining was real. Now, she is finally going out for just like a night of like normalcy to a Halloween party. She sees him there, and he takes full advantage. And after this scene of assault, he drugs and takes her home and hopes to see if she can remember what happens. And when he learns that she's not really planning on staying quiet about this, he decides to take her captive, and he changes tactics. And his aim is to get her to fall in love with him, because he needs to keep her quiet. Luca is the son of a mafia boss. He's second in line, and he knows that his father will take her out. And this is very coercive. There's a lot of dubious consent, of course, non-consent. And Luca is a bit of a psychopath himself, okay? But I think what worked for me in this are the slow reveals on how the pining has been mutual, his acts of care that illuminate how observant that he has been of her. And it was crazy where this ended up. This is actually a duet, and I'm really excited about the second book. So, Sordid by Nikki Sloan. Very different from a lot of the books that I've read from her. And I did like the author's note in this, because she apologizes to her husband as well as thanking him. But she does note that this is her husband's least favorite book of hers, because it is an MMF. And I just thought that was hilarious. Next, I have to bring up The Madhouse, okay, by Liza James. This is a sapphic step-sibling romance, and this has all of the trigger warnings. There are trigger warnings for child abuse, molestation. This kind of reads a bit like religious horror, to be honest. There is the attempt of animal harm within 10% of this book. This is gory. There is a lot of blood play. This runs the gambit in terms of trigger warnings because it's all descriptively depicted on the page. Cedar and Fee, I'm going to call her Fee because she would prefer that, but her name is Ophelia, grew up in a very traumatic home. I don't want to reveal the nature of that because I think the point of this book is to really reveal that to Fee. And we meet Cedar at the beginning of this book when they've been estranged, and she hears that Fee is being let out of the mental hospital after killing their parents. And she feels guilty for having left Fee in that situation when they were younger. For reasons, she had to get out, and she's been able to forge her own path and start a new chapter. And she goes to pick up Fee, bring her into her home so that she can heal and start over. Yet, I mean, the trauma in this is just so heavy, and their connection, in my opinion, felt faded. In fact, that forbidden element of them being step siblings, once you learn how they grew up, just seemed to wither away. And I always want to come into a forbidden romance needing, okay, I need that connection to make these social norms make no sense. Like, I need that connection to make the stigma of their connection pale in comparison to what they have. And this gave it to me. And it also was really compelling because the trauma is so immense, just the way in which their connection is written. I was questioning how Liza James was going to pull this off because Fee is so broken. She's brainwashed. She's been indoctrinated, and she has PTSD. I mean, her trauma is so debilitating. I didn't know if I wanted them to come together, and the way that Liza James does it, oh, I thought it was so clever. This is also a book where she does make them pay in a way, and it has a cliffhanger. I mean, full freaking drop. And I still rated it at 5 stars, but the cliffhanger is real in this one, and I do need the second book. Absolutely loved it though. Beware of the trigger warnings and look them up. I think I want to move into, let's get into our bully romance. Burn for Me by Sara Cate. Ooh, this is a student-teacher age gap bully romance. And it is following Everly, who is now a professor after a pretty successful career as an investigative journalist. And her debut article, the one that put her on the map, the one that gave her so much success, is the one that changed Cullen's life forever. She took down a human trafficking ring, and the head of that ring happened to be Cullen's father. And as a young boy, the trajectory of his life completely changed afterwards. And now, as a student, he is hell-bent on making Everly pay for that because she just so happens to be his professor. He wants her to pay for the life that he could have lived had it not been for that article. And Everly is willing to submit to his rage, his anger, his coercion, and quite frankly, his abuse, because she feels guilty for the life that he's led, because the greatest day of her career was the worst of his life. And so I think Sara Cate does that really well, because I did like that within Gravity. These heroines that are willing to be the sight of the hero's rage and anger, how that illuminates them, how that feeds them. And I love the sort of gray space within this, because there comes a point where the question is posed if it's bullying, if Everly is willing to take it. And because of her willingness and the way that they're able to connect in this way, Cullen begins to fall And I just love where they ended up. I love the lengths that are gone into this. It's very heady, and it also has one of my favorite things where I believe the hero looks up the tears of Everly in this, which is like a weird thing that I love in romance. I know it sounds harsh, okay? To me, I know it sounds harsh, but I do like when like heroes, you know, lap up the tears of the heroine when we're in a dark romance or we're in a bully romance, because it just feels like any way that they can consume the heroine, they'll take. And I just love that. But anyway, this is very good. I kind of want to move into historicals. Okay, I apologize if things are different. I'm just doing a last minute change here because I think both of these authors, in terms of dark historical romances, write compelling prologues. There are also two series that I absolutely love that I have yet to talk about on my channel. So I have got to bring up the Scoundrel of St. James series by Lorraine Heath. I think Lorraine Heath writes a roller coaster of a plot, and she's giving you an uppercut of swoon as well as dark elements within her historicals. I absolutely love her as an author. I don't think I've rated anything by her. I think it's 3 stars, truly. This is the first in the Scoundrel of St. James series, In Bed with the Devil. We're following Lucian, who is an earl, but there is a lot of mystery centered around his identity and rumors about him murdering in order to acquire it. And it is because of that reputation that Lady Catherine goes and seeks out his aid in taking out someone that's harming a loved one. And I love the found family aspect within this series, being that Lucian grew up on the streets of London with a group of kids that are now his family. They survived together, and he used his title to improve all of their situations. And I feel like in his mind, the cherry on top with that would be to marry Franny, who grew up with them. He believes her to be the love of his life, and he wants so desperately to acquire respectability among the ton so that she can feel comfortable by his side. And so when Lady Catherine asks if he will serve as her hitman, he takes the opportunity to acquire her services in training Franny in the ways of the ton. And I love this kind of setup when our heroine is tasked with finding the hero love, or helping him with that rather, and they fall instead. Now, not only is the prologue gut-wrenching and just the overall tale of all of them as a group, I just enjoy the theme of them being placed in these positions within the society that almost atone for just the ills of how they grew up. I absolutely love this series, so I have to bring it up. Next, The Devil You Know series by Kerrigan Byrne. I have to bring this up. I've talked about the Victorian Rebel series, but I absolutely love the friendship and camaraderie among women. This is the second book in the series following Cecilia, and she met her besties in school as a child, obviously in a time where education was very limited for women, and there they formed the Red Rogues, which is really just like this club where they got together, read poetry, drank, did everything that was forbidden to them, and also shared each other's trauma. There's an event that happens in the first book that really forges this pact together, and in this book we're following Cecilia, who is our curvy heroine who has learned to revel in her abundance and is very empowered. Yet in the beginning of this book, we see her traumatic and horrific childhood, the teasing and the terrorizing that she endured because of her body, and also how she was rescued from that upbringing after inheriting a gaming hell from a mysterious benefactor with ties to her mother's side of the family. And when she takes this on, it puts her in the direct path of Ramsay, who is a chief justice investigating something nefarious going on within the gaming hell. He is a grump, and he's a very practical and prickly and of order type of man, and she has a very lust for life mentality, yet he is tempted by her, and they're forced into proximity when he's tasked with protecting her as he's trying to uncover what's been happening at this gaming hell. And I absolutely love this. I mean, he's gone for her and he reluctantly leans into the flesh, but I think he learns to appreciate her way of being and seeing. And I also like that there's a moment where she's like not willing to settle on that for him. So I loved this. This is my favorite within the series and I had to bring it up. And then before I did my little reset, I was going to bring up Sam Mariano because I love her Morelli family series. But I have talked about Sam Mariano recently. I always will. I love her. I think if you enjoy Sam Mariano and her twisted and coercive heroes, you should try Adelaide Forrest. Adelaide Forrest writes heroes that are obsessive, possessive, and coercively corner the heroines into the palm of their hands. And there's something about her heroes that are very endearing because you know everything stems from their obsession of them. And she writes compelling breeding kink as well. So I think a good place to start would be Wrong, which is a novella. It's sort of a dad's best friend romance as well, where the heroine really grew up viewing the hero as her uncle. There's mutual pining. Of course, it's been forbidden, and it's a little taboo because he did watch her grow up. Now, our hero has specific tastes when it comes to steam. So he is a part of a sex club where he can get those needs met. Consensual, non-consensual play, to be specific. And at the beginning of this book, he is on his way, okay, to engage in a particular scene, which again is consensual, but there's also no contact that would shatter the fantasy. And when he arrives, due to a mix-up, he believes that the heroine is the one that signed up for this. And so when he captures her and gets into this scene, he kind of takes the opportunity to seal what he believes is inevitable between them. This does start out with a non-consensual, turns into dubious consensual type of scene. But thereafter, he systematically goes about claiming her as his. And like I said, like they are true alphas. They are willing to toy with the heroine's mind. They are willing to corner them if they have to have them in their clutches. And in this novella, that is no different. I think it's a good way to get a taste of what she does. She has a mafia series that I absolutely love. And I think if you like Sam Mariano's twisted heroes, you'll enjoy Adelaide Forrest's. Again, there's just something like endearing about it. I don't know why I read it like that. Like sometimes the lengths that they're willing to go to are kind of comical. So I also feel like I have to mention, okay, Lexi C. Foss's Blood Alliance series. It's paranormal, okay? It's dark, it's dubious, and I'm going to talk about the first book, Chastely, Bitten, because I've mentioned her series before, but I don't think I've gone into the whole setup. And although I will say the first book within the series is not my favorite, I think it's the perfect place to start because our heroine, Juliet, was born and chosen to be a blood virgin. Because in the Blood Alliance world, humans have no rights. They are mere flesh toys and blood bags for lichens and vampires who rule the world. Blood Alliance is a decree, and I just love opening up her ebooks because she has that decree, it has the seal. I just love the packaging of this series so much. And Juliet is a good entry point for this world, being that she has been raised into this world not knowing of the history of humans, like basically the world that we live in now, that humans once ruled, that they weren't always enslaved. She was raised to be submissive and to obey and serve. And in this book, she's being auctioned off and she's bought by Darius. And Darius has bought her to secretly dismantle this egregiously corrosive system. And he does want to place humans back in a position of power, which would vanquish the consequence of basically eliminating their food supply. The world is crazy. and sort of a fascist type of, totalitarian ruler who's a little unhinged. So he goes about educating Juliet and bringing her into his plan that he's been hashing out to dismantle this system. And so it is through her eyes that we really get a lot of the world building, our education of what's happening, and his plot of espionage. But what I love about this series is that I enjoy how she does dubious consent. She places these heroines in high risk situations when it comes to their life and in a position to trust the heroes because they are going into, dangerous settings for humans with vampires who have no respect for their life, and they have to trust that the hero will step in when it goes too far. Their life is literally in their hands. All of the heroines really are, are really possessions in this world. And I just find it to be complete catnip when not only our couples get the HEA, but the world around them arrives at one as well because of their union. I love systemic change when it comes to the romance. I love that ripple effect. And this entire series just continues to get better and better. I believe the last one comes out this month. Okay, it's the perfect time to jump on, and I absolutely love it. And I think it's only appropriate to end off with the darkest series that I have ever read, and that is Pam Godwin's Deliver series. And I want to talk about the third book in that series because if you have picked up the series, then I think it's important to get to book 3. I see people read the first book, they got into the second book. I think the third book gives you what I'm going to tell you because I think it's important to note the social justice aspect of this series. This series is centered around human sex trafficking victims that band together and go back into captivity to free those like themselves. I think it also has one of the best redemption arcs for a villain when it comes to Van as a character who is responsible for kidnapping Camilla, who's the heroine of the third book. And in this book, she is willing to risk her freedom and go back into captivity in order to help the man that broke her heart at 16. It's very interesting because in this book, not all is as it seems. And we really get the beginning of this sort of heist-like espionage manifesto of this found family of survivors. And I absolutely love it. And I definitely think this is the one to get to. But the one thing that I love about this series and about Pam Godwin is that she is going to descriptively depict depravity on the page. There is one scene within the fourth book in the series, I know it's Manipulate, maybe the fourth or fifth. That's the darkest thing I've ever read on the page when it comes to dark romance. And yet, I can always trust her to make them pay. Pam is going to level them at the neck. I never feel like anything is gratuitously placed. I always am drafted into each character's mind and understand their choices. And although she takes me down that dark corridor, I know that she is going to transmute trauma and make it have rhyme and reason and sing. And I just love that about this series. It's definitely a must in my opinion. If you can handle the trigger warnings, which I think it goes without saying, I should have said that at the top of this, please check the trigger warnings. I may not have brought all of them up within, each book that I went over, but please check the trigger warnings. I think dark romance, and it's probably fitting with Pam because she does not write them at the beginning of her books so that they don't get flagged on Amazon. But I think, make sure that you check the trigger warnings. But if you've picked up the first book in this series, I implore you to continue because the arc of this is just so freaking beautiful. I absolutely loved it. It remains to be one of my favorites. I have the bind up of the first 3 thanks to Jen, my bestie from the book Refuge. So I'm really grateful for that. But I think I'm gonna wrap this video up here. I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for asking me to collab Samantha. I hope you can consider subscribing and sticking around. If you were able to make your way all the way to the end of this video, please leave me a dark heart. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.